Charlie Ginn. I'm the immediate past chair of the State Bar of Texas, and I am here with Larry McDougal, the bar's immediate past president, and we are the host today for your forum. Thank you for being with us.
We're joined today by Joe Escobedo of Edinburg and Cindy Tisdale of Granbury. They're both running to become our next president-elect of the State Bar of Texas. This forum is a chance for Texas lawyers to meet our candidates and learn more about their platforms.
Among other topics, we're going to be asking our presidential candidates questions related to the practice of law and the governance of the State Bar of Texas. Thank you for watching with us today. Those of you that are watching with us live can submit questions to us via the chat feature. We're looking forward to seeing your questions.
This forum is going to be 1 hour long, and we want to get through as many questions as possible. Candidates will have up to 2 minutes to answer each question. We will start with introductions. Cindy and Joe, would you each take about a minute to introduce yourselves? Let's start with Joe.
Sure, thank you, Larry. My name is Joe Escobedo Jr. I'm from South Texas. I live in McAllen. My office is in Edinburg, Texas. I have a tort litigation practice with my partner, Luis Cardenas. Been practicing for about 33 years. Started off as a defense lawyer, became a plaintiff's lawyer. Now I do both, and I do mediations. I'm married for about going on 33 years, have 2 daughters and 4 wonderful grandsons, and as I believe I mentioned the last time, we've been told that we now have a granddaughter on the way, so we're all very excited about that. So I'm extremely excited and humbled to be here and ready to answer the questions, so thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Cindy Tisdale. I'm an attorney practicing in Granbury, Texas, and I'm also of counsel with Lynch Chapel in Alsop in Midland. I practice family law. That's all I do. I'm board certified in family law, and I've been practicing for 27 years. I started my career as an assistant DA in Waco in McLennan County in their civil division. I went from there to private practice, and I've been a solo practitioner since 1999. I have 2 wonderful kids. We all have wonderful kids, but my daughter's a junior at TCU, and she is in nursing, and my son's a 2L at Baylor Law School. Although he says he does not want to do family law, and I don't blame him. But I'm very honored to be here. I'm honored to be here with Joe and Larry and Charlie to answer your questions, and I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
All right, well, let's go with the first question then. And Cindy, we'll start with you. COVID-19 has affected society and the legal profession in many ways. What can the State Bar do to help lawyers adjust to pandemic life and beyond?
Could any of us imagine 2.5 years ago that we would be doing Zoom, court Zoom, deposition Zoom, meeting Zoom? I didn't even know what Zoom was 2.5 years ago. And in this short amount of time, our entire practice has changed. More people are working remotely. More people, offices are getting rid of their big buildings and just working remotely. And I think we need to, as a State Bar, we need to listen to our membership and what helps them out the most in changing the dynamics and the paradigm of their practice. I was on a task force, Larry, that you put together to help lawyers through the pandemic. And so we have to look also at not only how has our practice changed, but how has our mental health changed, and how has it affected our mental health. And I'm sure we're going to get into that more a little bit later, hopefully, because I want to get into that a little bit more. But I think we need to look at not only our practice, but ourselves too, and how we're going to get ourselves through this pandemic. And it's going to take a lot. Depression is rising among all lawyers. And we need to make sure we're aware of that. We need to make sure we help our members and our lawyers through that.
Thank you, Cindy. Joe?
So I agree. There's no way that back in March of 2020, any of us could have predicted where we'd be today. There is a concern, and it's always existed relating to attorney wellness, problems with addiction, problems with alcohol and drug addiction as well. That problem has always existed. That's why we have this wonderful program. The State Bar has this wonderful program called TLAP, Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. We need to obviously continue that program and really be supportive of that program. So this is the problem that the pandemic has one of the problems the pandemic is causing is problems with attorney wellness, and we need to address that. There are a number of Facebook groups that I have joined during the pandemic that deal with attorney health and wellness. They're wonderful lawyers that are just there as a support group for lawyers that have problems through the pandemic. The Zoom, what a wonderful thing that we have. I was just in a Zoom hearing before I got here in federal court in McAllen. Obviously, I'm in Austin, but the hearing was in federal court. So there's a number of ways that the bar can do, a number of things that the bar can do to continue to help attorneys that are dealing with these issues caused by the pandemic. Those are just a few.
Thank you, Joe and Cindy. Joe, this next question, we're going to start with you and then go to Cindy. The legal profession is very unique. We get the right to self-govern ourselves. That includes our disciplinary rules. How important is it to you that we continue, that you continue the right for self-governance for the state bar, and would you work as president to sustain it?
It is the most important thing that we need to be working for. I've been traveling, as Cindy has as well, traveling throughout the state of Texas, meeting lawyers, and making sure that they understand that this right that we have, this right to self-govern, is very unique to our profession. This is not something that other professions enjoy. We elect our attorneys to represent us on the board of directors. Those attorneys appoint, obviously, in addition to instituting policy at the board, they also appoint people, the attorneys and public members, to serve on the grievance committee. So this is a very important right that we have. We now just recently, as of yesterday, I believe, have learned that the U.S. Supreme Court denied cert in the McDonald litigation. So we now have a roadmap in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals opinion in the McDonald's decision. We need to look at that. We need to study that case. Obviously, all of us have, but we now have a roadmap as to what we can do to make sure that what the state bar does as an integrated mandatory bar, that the actions are germane. So we need to make sure that we keep our right to self-governance, and that's one of the ways we do it. We now have a roadmap that allows us to do it, and it's one of the most important things we can protect.
Cindy?
Absolutely, 100%. I will work to maintain our status as a mandatory self-governing bar. You know, to think of what's the alternative? Do we really want to be governed by an outside body, either the legislature or somebody appointed by the governor? Do we want non-lawyers disciplining us, regulating us? To me, that is a nightmare. I would absolutely work to sustain and maintain our independent status and our self-governing status. You know, like Joe said, we've been traveling the state, and I've heard some complaints about different things of the bar, as we all have. No system is perfect, but it works, and it works for all the lawyers in Texas. Our discipline system works. You know, we had approximately 7,000 grievances last year. About 8% of those were appealed up to the Board of Disciplinary Appeals. And you might not like it, you might not like the outcome of it, but the system works to protect not only lawyers, but the public. And so I'd absolutely 100% agree that we need to maintain that status and maintain our self-regulating, self-disciplining bar.
Thank you.
Well, Cindy, since you just talked about that, let's move on to the next question.
Oh.
Some lawyers have suggested the need to reform certain aspects of the state bar grievance system. What are your thoughts about the grievance system?
And I'll repeat, it works. Some people don't like it, but it works. I know there was a push to have grievances be notarized, and that did not pass, that failed. But to me, looking back at it, I also don't want to have a chilling effect on people trying to file grievances. Again, last year, about 7,000 grievances were filed. There are, I believe, if my memory is correct, about 3,000 of those, or about 4,000 were dismissed as not a complaint, and then 3,000 were investigated. If you look at those numbers, the system works. Again, as attorneys, we might not like it when we get a grievance. I believe anybody that practices in family law like I do, I don't know of a single one that has not received a grievance of some sort, but they're all mostly dismissed as inquiries and not a grievance. But we have to protect the public, because unfortunately there are some bad actors out there within our ranks. And we also have to maintain that status of protecting the public and not only just protecting ourselves. So as far as the grievance system is concerned, it's not perfect, I'll be the first to say that, but it works.
Joe?
So It's certainly, I believe, one of the best systems in the country. It's also important as to why the self-governance. The persons that you elect to represent you on the board of directors appoint those lawyers and public members to be on the grievance committee. So that's important. And you heard the statistics. I don't need to discuss them again, but that's a reality. I know that if you're a lawyer that has a grievance against you, those statistics may not mean anything to you because you're just worried about the grievance that you have against you. But the reality is the statistics that Cindy just mentioned are actually what the facts are. One thing that we can do, there is an ombudsman's program relating to clients that are bringing grievances. We need to have a similar program for the lawyers that have had grievances filed against them. The most common cause of a grievance is failing to answer a call, failing to respond to an email, failing to respond to a letter. That's the most common cause of it. No, I don't think any lawyer should lose their ticket as a result of failing to respond to a grievance. We need to look at why are they not responding. Oftentimes, the fact that they're not responding to their clients is indicative of a problem that results in them not responding to the grievance committee. So I think we need to have some kind of a program where we're allowing attorneys that kind of assistance.
We've got one of our first questions from our audience. Thank you for submitting that. Joe, Cindy, I know you're both friends, and so this question may be a little strange, but I think it's a good question. Do you both agree on everything? What policy do you support or oppose that makes you different than your opponent? And Cindy, we'll start with you.
Sure, and that's difficult to say without going through each and every thought process on each question, because I might not know everything that Joe believes or thinks. I will say that we do agree on the big things. Maintaining our status as a self-regulating, self-disciplining bar. We agree on that, thank goodness, in my opinion. I think what differentiates us a little bit is our backgrounds and how we came up through the state bar system. I'm a family law attorney. We've both been chair of the board of directors. I've been chair of the Texas Bar Foundation, but I was also kind of worked my way up before that through the sections in the family law section and kind of getting down to those committees and worked my way up from there. But it's difficult for me to say what do we disagree on without hearing his thoughts on certain specific issues. But again, and it's a great question, and we've been asked that question before of what do you disagree on? And it's just tough to say globally what we disagree on because, we've been asked about the big issues and the big ticket items, and we do agree on those.
Joe?
So we've heard this question before, and I've given it some thought. And the thing is, you have two lawyers that have worked their way up through this organization, both chairs of the board. And I worked my way up through the sections. I was on the council for the Hispanic issues section, and so we love this organization, and we would not do anything to put this organization in harm's way. So as far as the big issues, and again, I can't read Cindy's mind, she can't read mine, but certainly on the big issues we agree, and I don't think there'd be any surprise that we do because of what I just stated. Our backgrounds are different. She's a family law lawyer. My background is I started off as a civil defense lawyer, became a plaintiff's lawyer. Now I do both. I do mediations as well. I represent different entities. I represent individuals. So our background's different. But when it comes to the biggest issue, and I understand that it may not be, it certainly may not draw interest. But when it comes to the big issues, considering the fact that we love this organization, we're going to agree on most of the big issues.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Joe, since Cindy went last time first, you get to go this time. What should the bar focus on to ensure its relevance and meaningful to its member?
So let me try to answer that from my point of view as a solo and a small firm. I think some of the most disaffected people, lawyers, I should say, in the state bar, are solos and small firms. You know, they're a big portion of our attorney population. You know, last time I checked, they're like 37%. We have a general solo section, and I belong to, is really good in providing CLE and things of that nature, but very few solos and small firms belong to it. So we need to look into that might be a way to, we need to get them involved. There's obviously other lawyers, but I'm just focusing on the solos for now. One way that we got them involved before, I remember when Trey Apple was president, he had a program where the board, before every board meeting, would show up at the city the day before, and the lawyers would provide, in fact, I know Larry and I participated in that, the lawyers would provide free CLE for solos and small firms. So that's one way that we can provide a service and make the State Bar relevant. Another one is we need to make sure that the grievance system is fair, and we talked about that. But those are just some of the ways we can do to make sure the State Bar is fair and is relevant to its members.
We need to listen. We need to listen to our members. You know, there's 108,000 plus members of the State Bar of Texas. You know, we can't listen to everyone at the same time, but every one of you that are watching this and every one of our members have good ideas for our bar, and we need to incorporate those ideas into the bar. I'm a solo practitioner myself, like Joe said, and you know, I hear all the time in traveling the state, what's the State Bar doing for me? You know, the State Bar caters to big firm lawyers. Well, look at the two of us sitting here. They're not catering to big firm lawyers. We're both solos, we're both small town lawyers. You know, I understand the difficulties in running a practice, having to make payroll every month, the concern about the trust fund, and I do all of my own books. I do all of my own payroll. I do all of that. So it's not so much just the practice of law, but it's also the business side of it, and trying to mesh those two and still have an outside life, which this past month I don't think either one of us have. But you know, to be relevant, the State Bar, honestly, if you look at what the State Bar provides its members, it's astounding. For the $235 a year that you pay, if you go on to the benefits page and look at what the State Bar offers you, there's no way if you went out into the marketplace you could get that much for $235. But we need to listen, because like I said, I started off this with listening, and we need to listen. We need to have better lines of communication with our members. The State Bar does a great job of sending out information, but unfortunately we can't make our members read the emails. We need to do a better job of targeting those emails, of listening to you and having that feedback and a conduit for that feedback, so we can listen to what our members need, what's important to them at this time, and see what we can do to help those members.
Well, so I guess with that, there's a new generation of lawyers that are coming up through the State Bar. What can the State Bar do to guide and prepare the next generation of lawyers in Texas? Joe? Oh, sorry. It's Cindy's turn. My fault.
Oh.
Cindy. Sorry.
No problem. You know, this is near and dear to my heart. Like I said at the beginning, my son's in law school right now. And the way these young lawyers communicate with their clients, communicate with each other, the way that whole paradigm is shift, you know, I would never think about giving my cell phone number and texting with clients or doing something on TikTok or Instagram, but that's how the young attorneys are working. And so we have to kind of catch up as a State Bar to these new lawyers, because again, we work under the same paradigm that we always have of this is how we communicate with our members, this is how we communicate with clients. These new lawyers have completely shifted that, and I think the pandemic has completely shifted that also. But again, I'm going to go back to the communication part of it, because these new lawyers coming out of law school, scared to death, trying to find a job, they have a mountain of school loans, and we need to make sure we're communicating with them what's available to them through their bar. But yeah, the whole new, again, paradigm of coming out of law school, being 24, 25 years old, they don't communicate in the same way, they don't process in the same way, and they don't think in the same way. And I'm saying that with all the love in my heart because my son is one, but it just seems like they work at a different pace, different hours, different whatever it happens to be. Not all of them, but a majority of them. And I think the pandemic has a lot to do with that too. But I think the State Bar has to rush and keep up with that to make sure we're communicating with all of our members in the correct way, including our young members.
Thank you, Joe.
So when I graduated from law school 33 years ago, I was so lucky. I worked at a firm and wonderful lawyers mentoring me, teaching me everything about the practice of law, teaching me how to try a lawsuit. And I fully understand that not all young lawyers have that. So we need to the State Bar needs to make sure that there's some kind of mentoring program. We have a wonderful bar leadership program. We need to reinforce that, perhaps expand that. We need some kind of mentoring programs. The sections are the perfect place to do that. I know when I was in the Hispanic Issues section leadership, we would try to do that with our younger lawyers. Because not all young lawyers, not all lawyers coming out of law school have the benefit of working at a firm and learning from older lawyers, we need to make sure we have some kind of program relating to mentoring young lawyers. Now, the other side of that, of course, is the young lawyers, if those programs exist, and they do, some counties have, we set one up in my county. But what we found out was there were more mentors than mentees. The young lawyers need to take advantage of those programs when they exist. So that's one of the things that the State Bar and also local bars can do to prepare the next generation of lawyers for the future.
All right. Let's kind of talk about the two of you for a second. What characteristics and traits do you think contribute to being an effective leader of the State Bar? I believe, Joe, you're up.
It's a good question. My career has taken an interesting path. As I mentioned earlier, I started off doing insurance defense, left that to become a plaintiff's lawyer. I now have a practice that is both plaintiff and defense. Do a lot of defense work where I'm hired by local counsel, and about a third of my practice is mediation practice. It could be all my practice, but I'm not willing to give up the trial practice just yet. So I have a very broad experience of the practice of law, and within that is I've gotten to meet a lot of lawyers doing that kind of work. I deal on a daily basis with lawyers from all over the state who either hire me to do mediation or are on the other side of me on a case or are my co-counsel. So it's that broad base of experience that I believe helps me be an effective leader for the State Bar, because let's face it, when you're on the bar, when you're on the board, you get to meet lawyers from all over the state. But this additional work, my work experience has allowed me to do that in a much more, just do that a lot more. And I believe that experience is what allows me to be an effective leader. I can bring people together. There's just a lot of apathy. There's a lot of divisiveness in our bar, and we need somebody that can bring all these lawyers together. And I've been able to talk to all kinds of lawyers throughout the state and bring them together. So I think that's the best trait that I have as far as making me an effective leader.
And looking at the traits of being an effective leader, when I was chair of the board of directors, chair of the Bar Foundation, and I look back on those times, and this is what other people told me about my leadership skills, was I was a consensus builder. You get 108,000 lawyers in one room, we're not all going to agree on everything. But I believe I'm effective because I do try to build a consensus among lawyers, and I think that is primary and necessary to be an effective leader. But also we need to be bringing each other up. Sorry.
Not at all, sorry.
We need to be bringing each other up. You get to be a leader of the bar, you need to put your hand down and bring someone else up with you. Like Joe said, mentoring, doing something to that effect. You can't get into your own bubble and think about yourself and only those that are on the bar board or in leadership. We have to be bringing the others up. And third, I've already said this before, but I'm going to say it again because I'm a firm believer of it. To be an effective leader for the state bar, you have to listen. You can't be the one that's doing all the talking. You have to listen. You have to implement those plans and again, try to bring a consensus and build a consensus among the members.
You know that both of you have had a lot of activity in leadership and service leadership in the bar, and both had expensive experience serving our attorneys in the state. But what experience has been the most satisfying for you personally in those roles? Cindy?
There's so many, I have to pick one. And if you've heard this before, you may have heard this, but I'm going to say it again because it's the first thing that comes to mind. Because it was the most satisfying for me. When I was chairing the Texas Bar Foundation, that's when Hurricane Harvey hit. It hit on a Friday. I was on the phone all weekend with Andrea Stone, our executive director, and the state bar leadership. And by Monday morning, we had a portal up on our website accepting donations for those lawyers that were, and the people that were ravaged by the hurricane. I am so proud of the executive committee of the Texas Bar Foundation. We met at least one time a week, if not more, because we were reviewing those applications on a weekly basis. These people needed the money now. They didn't need to wait 2-3 months to get money. We raised almost $200,000 in a very short amount of time, and every single dollar went back to help either those that were ravaged by the hurricane or attorneys. And the one that just is so near and dear to my heart, the Jefferson County Bar had an application for a grant, and we granted them $100,000. That money was spent on individual attorneys that had lost everything, and all they wanted to do was get back to work. That money bought them a laptop, a printer, a suit if need be. And to me, that's what it's all about, helping other lawyers, helping them when they're in a time of need. And that is what I'm so proud of, is that we got that done so quickly, efficiently, and every dollar went to help those lawyers, and I'm very proud of that.
Awesome. Joe?
So this question has been asked before, and I always just kind of go towards when I was chair of the board, and it was one of the best time that I ever had as far as being a servant for the bar. But I guess let me just one of the most proudest that I've ever felt was the years I spent on the steering committee for the Texas Minority Council program. If you're not familiar with TMCP, I say you should become familiar with it. It is a wonderful program that the bar puts on every year. And it has a big conference usually at the end of the year, sometime like October or November. They're having one this year. The last 2 years got canceled because of COVID. But we would put together this program. The steering committee puts this program together for women, minority lawyers to participate, and it's just an incredible program. We provided interviews at the program. These Fortune 500 companies would come to the program and actually interview lawyers there. And lawyers came out of there with basically with work, representing these companies. And every time we'd have this program, I'd always, when I left, and it was exhausting work, but every time we put together this program, I always felt like a job well done, that we had actually done good work for Texas lawyers, and it's a wonderful program. So as far as a feel-good moment for me, that was always one, being on the steering committee for the Texas Minority Council program.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe.
I guess, next question. What can the state bar do to assist attorneys who are struggling under the pressures of a difficult economy? Joe, I think it's your turn.
Okay, so the state bar is doing some of it. I know that when the pandemic first hit, there was a real big issue relating to dues. And by the way, I mean, as Cindy's mentioned, our dues are really low, $235. But I mean, obviously some lawyers belong to sections, some lawyer belongs to other things that gets that price up. So I think that one of the things that the state bar can do is, if there is an actual need, and there certainly is as a result of the pandemic, then the state bar needs to look at perhaps, if not waiving it, certainly providing an extension for those dues to be paid. Another thing the state bar can do is they can provide some kind of there's programs that I've seen. I have 2 young daughters, and by young I mean in their 20s, and they're at the point of trying to learn how to control their own money, which their mom and I are very happy about that. And so there's programs that address those kind of young people and helping them deal with money, helping them learn how to budget their own money. We can try to use some of those programs with lawyers. I know I'm talking about young people, but I think you can expand those kind of programs to just all kinds of lawyers. There are lawyers that are suffering because of the pandemic. Then we need to take a good hard look at what's ways we can solve it. And a couple of things that I've just mentioned. Number one is if there's a real need, then I think we need to look into providing extensions, assistance. There's all kinds of assistance State Bar does. For example, scholarships for CLE. We can certainly look into doing this as well. Another thing is to provide, along the lines of a CLE, some kind of a program relating to helping lawyers, especially young lawyers, but all kinds of lawyers, deal with finances. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that I think we can work on and we can actually institute.
Cindy?
Yeah, and those are all good ideas. You know, CLE, in traveling the state this past month, you know, I've had some complaints about why is it so expensive. And I've challenged every single one of those attorneys. If you look on the CLE, State Bar CLE website, there's a button you can push for asking for a scholarship. To my knowledge, we've never turned anyone down for a scholarship. If you can't afford a CLE program that you want to go to, you fill out that scholarship form, you're going to get it. And back when I was chair of the board, we did a challenge, can you do all of your CLE for free? Guess what? You can. There's enough programs out there, you can get all of your CLE for free through the bar, through free programs and webinars. You know, the State Bar also has a lawyer referral service. So, you know, again, being a solo, and I'm the one that's responsible for the money coming in, and I'm responsible for the money that's flowing out. The lawyer referral service is a great program that you can sign up to get referrals from the State Bar. So if someone writes into the State Bar emails and they want a referral for a family law attorney in my area, then I get that referral. And there's some different things, so much I can charge for the first visit and things of that sort, but that's something to look into. Again, I think the State Bar is doing a lot to help lawyers. It's communicating what we already have to our members to make sure you're taking advantage of that.
Perfect. You mentioned this earlier, Cindy, but lawyer well-being has becoming increasingly important, especially since the pandemic. How do each of you maintain your mental health and well-being?
During this past month of campaigning, I haven't had too much me time. But honestly, you know, before the pandemic, during the pandemic, everything else, you have to make time for you. You have to make time for your family. And if that is just sitting in a room by myself, quiet, if it's taking a walk with the dogs, whatever it happens to be. But as far as maintaining my mental health, I would say number one, my friends and family. They're the ones that keep me grounded. They're the ones that keep me focused. If I ever need a pick-me-up, I call my family and they instantly pick me up. And so it's those personal connections. That's what's kept me going through all of this, and that's what continues to keep me going through all of this, are those personal connections with my family and friends.
Absolutely. Joe?
Obviously, the family and friends. I mean, I'm very, very lucky to have the family that I have and the friends that I have. When the pandemic started, obviously, as a lawyer, I could work out of the house, and we were lucky that my daughters can do that as well. And so we were blessed. I know a lot of people that were not able to see their grandchildren. We were able to see our grandchildren. And there was a couple times when they got exposed, but that changed. But so I think family and friends is very, very important. I fully cognizant that there are lawyers out there that may not have the benefit of having the wonderful family and friends that Cindy and I might have. So we need to obviously be very cognizant of that and work on those programs we talked about earlier. But as lawyers, everyone wants your time. And unfortunately, when I was a younger lawyer, you could go home and, it was never at 5, but whenever you did go home, those emails stopped. They don't stop anymore. And so as a lawyer, you need to find a way to just stop the work and just focus on something that you like to do. I fish, I play guitar, whatever you like to do, that's what you need to do. And you need some time to just basically for yourself. So that's the way I do it. I understand that I'm very blessed, but all of us need to do something along those lines.
All right, audience question. What can the State Bar do to enhance ethics and professionalism among lawyers? Joe, you're up.
Well, certainly have done a lot. I remember when I was a younger lawyer, there wasn't a lot of professionalism going on. I mean, you'd go take a deposition, and sometimes those depositions were almost a full contact sport. But so a lot has changed. We need to, as a bar, continue to emphasize professionalism, and the one way we do that is obviously we have the creed that we need to emphasize on a daily basis. And I have judges in my neck of the woods that when there's a lawyer that's sworn in, a young lawyer that's sworn in, I mean they'll read it. They'll read the Texas Lawyer's Creed to them to make sure that they know it. But as far as the bar, the bar needs to continue to basically emphasize things like the Texas Lawyer's Creed, the ethics. Obviously, there's an ethics hotline that's available to lawyers. It's a very good hotline. If you ever I've used it. If you ever have anything that you think there's a question on, things come up, conflicts of interest. You can use that. And one of the complaints that I received from going throughout the state is that sometimes the response time is not as good. But that was as a result of the pandemic, and the response times is getting better. So those are kind of two things that the State Bar can do to reinforce professionalism and ethics.
When I was a young lawyer, I had older attorneys tell me Rule 11s are for liars and cheats. And that's the way I was brought up in this profession. Unfortunately, now it's just habit. That's what you do. You do a Rule 11 for everything. But I was brought up, if you say something in your handshake, your word is your bond. And it seems that that's kind of fallen by the wayside with some lawyers. I wouldn't say all by any stretch of the imagination, because I practice with some very fine lawyers that their word is their bond. But we need to get back to that. We need to get back to your reputation is everything to you. You only have it once. You lie to the court once, you lie to me once, your reputation is tarnished. And people don't understand that. Talking about the Lawyer's Creed, I believe it was Buck Files, when he was president, did an initiative with the Lawyer's Creed and had them all printed. So I have 2 giant-sized posters of the Lawyer's Creed, one in each of my conference rooms for where we have mediations. So guess what? The other party and the other lawyer have that Lawyer's Creed in front of them the whole time. But if you're talking about as a president-elect what I could do to bring civility back, I think it's by actions. I have to lead by action. I have to show that my actions and that I am civil person. I lead by that example, and that's the best way I think we can show other lawyers that that's how you have to run your practice and run your life, is by example.
You both have mentioned some great State Bar programs and benefits that the State Bar offers its members. One of the audience members is asking, how do you plan to spread word about these programs other than the mass emails that we receive sometimes daily?
And I'm laughing because that is something I've heard over and over from lawyers. Of the State Bar just inundates my inbox with emails, and I tell you, it seems it seems kind of silly to say, but one-on-one communication works the best. We had a program before the pandemic, back when I was on the bar board and chair, that the bar directors would go to bar associations in their district and speak to those bar associations and have that one-on-one contact to let them know everything that the bar had available for them. And it was amazing. And we need to get back to that. We need to, the pandemic is hopefully coming to an end. We need to get back to that one-on-one communication because lawyers don't open those inboxes or open those emails. I went to Midland one time actually to speak to their bar association, and there was a gentleman in the back, arms crossed, sour look on his face. And before I started my speech, I said, this is going to be a test. I want to teach you something you didn't know about your bar. And I pointed to this gentleman, I said, and you're my test subject. So I gave my speech for 30 minutes, and at the end I said, so sir, did I teach you anything about your bar you didn't know? After some grumbling and mumbling, he said, yeah, you actually taught me a lot I didn't know. Would he have opened that email? No. But did he sit there and listen to me and learn a lot about his bar? Yes, he did. So although it's going to be difficult to speak to all 108,000 lawyers, that's what we have to get back to because we can't make those attorneys open those emails.
Joe?
When I was on the board, the directors, one of the things that I liked, there's a lot of things I liked. One of the things I liked the most was we could get to go talk to our local bar associations and speak to them about all the benefits that the bar brings to them. And that was it's what Cindy was talking about when she did that in Midland. And I enjoy that a lot. And it was that kind of one-on-one communication that would drive home the understanding of what the bar could do for them. I mean, lawyers are busy. Texas lawyers are busy, and if you're a bar junkie like the people that are on this table, then you know what the bar does. But a lot of lawyers are okay with the bar basically just doing what it's supposed to be doing, and not necessarily knowing anything else beyond that. But we need to get back to that communication where people that are either board of directors or the directors, or certainly me as the president, if I'm lucky to get that designation, going around the state, talking to lawyers one-on-one, and explain to them what the bar does for them. That is the only way that you can drive home the message. They're just not going to open emails. But if you talk to them one-on-one, then hopefully it's going to get through to some people.
All right, another audience question. What do you think will be the hardest part of being president of the bar? Can I answer that one?
No. No.
Who's first? Is it
You
me?
are, Joe.
Somebody, I don't remember who said this. It was former state bar president. It may have been Trey. I don't remember. But somebody said that the year you expect is something along the lines. It's never the year you actually get. So I think dealing with the unknown is probably one of the hardest things as far as what might happen. You just don't know what's going to happen. When you do this, you're away from your practice, you're away from your family a lot, and you make sacrifices, and so that is a very difficult thing to deal with. Luckily, my kids are grown, but now I have 4 grandsons, so I want to spend time with them. So I'm waiting for May 3rd to come so I can actually start spending some time with my grandsons. So that's, to me, the hardest thing that I probably could expect is that you're going to be away a lot. And I have a partner that law partner that for some reason insists that I actually do work. And so it's difficult trying to basically balance family, your law practice, and the incredible amount of hours that is required to do. If I would have the honor to be to be elected as president-elect. So I think that's the biggest thing that could probably worry me is the fact that the amount of hours that's required.
2 things come to mind. First is the unknown. In the past couple of years, our presidents, you didn't expect a pandemic. You didn't expect lawsuits. You didn't expect all of those things that happened out of the blue. So for me, it's the unknown of what could happen next year or the year after that. And I want to kind of elaborate on what Joe said. The time away from your family and practice is important, but I look at time a little bit differently. If I'm elected, I only have a finite amount of time to try to communicate to all the lawyers of Texas the vision for the bar, what the bar does for them. And to me, that's going to be the biggest challenge of taking that time that I am president-elect and president of getting the word out for the bar, because I only have such a finite amount of time. And to me, that's going to be the biggest challenge.
On a larger scale, Cindy, you mentioned a few minutes ago that when you started practicing law that a handshake deal was maybe more prevalent than Rule 11s. But more generally, how has the practice of law changed since you became a licensed lawyer in Texas?
How has it not changed? Well, everything from, we didn't have, we had computers, but most people didn't have Westlaw. You went to the library, you looked in the books. Touring law firms this past month, there's very few libraries anymore. Instead of picking up the phone and calling each other, it's an email or text. You're losing that personal connection. And to me, that's how it's changed the most. People aren't as engaged in their local bars or going to lunch or doing whatever with their colleagues. And that's, to me, how it's changed the most. Forget the books, forget the internet, it's the personal connection. And that seems to have slipped quite a bit from when I started. It's not unusual. You could have opposing counsel, you go duke it out in court, then go have dinner afterward. You can still be friends afterward. That seems to be slipping by the wayside too. So, and talking about how it's changed over time from when I started, that to me really stands out to me as the personal connections.
Thanks, Cindy. Joe?
So I would agree. I was speaking at a CLE about 2-3 weeks ago on mediations, and there was a bunch of young lawyers there. And I'm a mediator, so I'm obviously, it's nice when they hire me as a mediator. But one of the questions that I asked for a show of hands, like, how many of you all have ever picked up the phone and spoken to opposing counsel and tried to settle the case like that? And other than the older lawyers that were in the group, very few hands. That's kind of the way we used to do it. There was a point when the mediations didn't exist. So I think we've lost that. We've lost that connection, that sort of that professional connection that we used to be able to have with lawyers, between lawyers, that bond that lawyers had. Like Cindy said, I have a lot of friends that are on the opposite side of me on cases, and yes, during the trial we fought like heck, but afterwards I never take it personally, neither do they. So I think we've lost that. The other one that really comes to mind, and it's I don't know, it might be even more troubling, is the practice of law has just become much more intrusive into your daily life, and it's what I talked about earlier. I never said that. I've always said, look, practice of law is not a 9-to-5 job, but there was a time, whether it was 6 or 7, you were driving home and you could kind of, relax at that point in time, because you could get home and know that everything's going to wait till tomorrow. That's not the case anymore. The practice of law is in your house 24 hours a day. And so we need to, as lawyers, we need to be able to shut that off. I have a point where it's when I get home, I don't look at my phone, and my wife insists on that. So I think that in many ways, the practice of law just become much more. There's never an off. Lawyers don't seem to have a problem with turning it off, and I think the pandemic has made that worse.
Some of these questions I want to go, ooh, me.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Next question from our audience. What can the State Bar do to promote diversity and inclusion within the legal profession? Joe, you're up.
Well, the good news is that it does that already. The even better news is that with the U.S. Supreme Court denying cert in the McDougal decision, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals opinion found that diversity, equity, inclusion was germane to the practice of law. And so that's the first thing, is that we need to understand that it is something that's germane to the practice of law. It's something that's important to the practice of law. I became a lawyer because my mom went to jury duty, and back then she lived in Mission, but back then the only federal courthouse was in Brownsville. She went to jury duty, and the judge was Reynaldo G. Garza. Reynaldo G. Garza was the first Hispanic federal judge appointed by President Kennedy. She came back home and told a very young me that how excited she was that the judge looked like her, had the same name, their maiden name. We can't underestimate the impact that it has for a diverse person, younger person, to see people that look like them in positions of power. And so how do we do this? We just need to continue to support the program, the department that we have that deals with all of these programs. And we need to basically continue to do some programs along that I've highlighted in my materials relating to pipeline programs to get young people interested, diverse young people interested in the practice of law. I chaired the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion program. There's a lot of ideas in our task report we provided to the board. But one of the things we can do is just make sure that we can have some kind of pipeline programs to make young people think that, if he did it, I can do it too. And that's one of the things that I think the bar can support.
There are a lot of minority leaders that are attorneys all over the state. It's just getting them involved in the bar. You look at the J.L. Turner Association, you look at the Mexican American Bar Association, the Hispanic Issues section, Women in the Law section. You have to get these people, there should be a pipeline. There are leaders all over the state, but why aren't they volunteering their time for the bar? And that's something that needs to be looked into. Do they not want to? Do they think it's too much time? Do they think there's a barrier up? We need to open those lines of communication with the groups that are already out there that have formed leaders, that have leaders, and have them get interested in the bar and leadership in the bar. Because like Joe said, I agree, to have someone in leadership that is a minority, it just helps those that are under them bring them up. And I mentioned that before. That's part of a leader, bringing others up with you. And so to me, we have to look at those pipelines, because there are some great lawyer leaders within those groups, and we need to get them involved in the bar.
What is the one thing that you enjoy most about being a lawyer, Cindy?
About being a lawyer?
Absolutely.
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is helping my clients. You said that, and I immediately thought of, there's a few kids that popped into my mind of adoptions I've done, or, when I started my practice, I did all the CPS work. I can still remember most of those kids because those children had such a tough life, and up to their young age, and being able to help them get into a forever home and leave that abuse behind, hopefully, it was so meaningful to me. And I don't do the CPS work anymore, but I'm still helping children and families because, the families are broken by the time they get to me. I had someone say, "Oh, you just break up families, you're a divorce lawyer." Unfortunately, those families are broken by the time they get to me. I try to help them put it back together into a form where they can move forward. And that, to me, is the most satisfying, especially when I can help my clients move forward from a divorce or anything else traumatic, and because it is traumatic for them and for the children, and to help them move forward with that, that to me has been the most satisfying.
Thank you. Joe?
Mm-hmm.
So I became a lawyer because I grew up very humbly, and I saw my parents got taken advantage of. So that is always going to be part of who I am. And so representing my clients and given my practice, I often represent the powerless against the powerful. and I get to equalize their rights. And so I have clients that I've represented in the last 30 years that still send me letters, that still send me Christmas cards. I've seen clients, and I mean, given my practice, especially on the PI side, it's oftentimes if you come in to see me, something tragic just happened. You know, you've lost a loved one. I always tell clients that usually you probably prefer never to have met me. So I always tell them something good has to come from this, and so we always I try so hard to make that happen. And I have clients that were kids when I represented them, and after we settled the case, we made sure that they had trust, they had annuities, and now they're in college, and a couple of them are lawyers. So nothing is more satisfying than representing clients that just otherwise would not have had a way to deal with whatever tragedy had beset them.
Well, we're about out of time, and I'm going to ask each one of you to give a brief closing remark. And Cindy, you're up.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to this, because this is important. This is your bar. It's our bar. And leadership of the bar is important. For closing, I want to touch back a little bit on, I talked about it before, but our mental health. Going through a pandemic, being isolated, has had a huge effect on lawyers, and we need to recognize that and be kind to one another. In looking, we have a Sharon Crowley Memorial Trust, and I was very proud to see in the proposed budget, the State Bar is adding money to that, because there's some lawyers that are going through depression. I think, according to that site, it was, 32 or 33% of young lawyers under 30 have an alcohol problem. About 28% of attorneys suffer from depression, and 11% of attorneys have had suicidal thoughts. Those numbers hurt my heart, and because it's something that can be prevented and can be helped. And so I want attorneys to know there's funds out there if you need help. You can apply for funds if you need rehab for drugs or alcohol or depression. And so I wanted to make sure I got that out, because we kind of talked about it, but we didn't really set it out. But I appreciate all of your time. I appreciate the hospitality I've received all over the state. That's something I'll always take with me, because meeting so many lawyers and talking about the issues with them has been just a blast for me. And it's been exhausting, but a blast. And so I want to thank you for your time. If you have any other questions, my brochure is at cindytisdale.com. You can look at there. My email's on there. I welcome any questions. Again, I talked about listening, and I'm going to be doing that. If I'm elected, I'm going to be accessible to you. Thank you, and thank you both for moderating. I appreciate it.
So we've been traveling this beautiful state of ours for the last month or so. And I got back to my office last Friday, and waiting on my desk was our bar journal, and there I am along with Cindy, and I'm thinking to myself, how did this happen? Yeah, and it just seems unreal at some point, sometimes. Just very humbled and blessed to be here. And with the bar, as my service to the bar has always been a way for me to pay back to a profession that's just given me everything that I have. And so that's the reason why I do what I do. The bar, luckily, with what the good news yesterday, but the bar still finds itself in a precarious position sometimes, and we need to make sure to safeguard it. I thank you all for your time and for your attention. We need to get more lawyers involved than we have so far. Cindy and I are trying everything we can to reach out to lawyers, but at the end, the lawyers need to be able to be reached out to. They need to be willing to be contacted. So we just need to keep this bar. It is the best bar in the country. I thank Larry and Charlie for hosting us, and thank you very much.
We want to thank both of you for being here, for what you've done over the last month. I know Larry can attest how difficult it is to travel the state and taking time away from your families and your practice. Thank you for making the effort to be here today and being so forthcoming with our questions. Larry, thank you to you for your leadership on this thing, on this committee today, but also for your service last year to the bar as president.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. As a reminder, voting is over. It works through May 2nd. It's over on May 2nd. So please make sure that you vote. You can find your ballot either on paper ballot that was mailed to you or an electronic ballot online. You can find more information about the elections on the State Bar website. That's texasbar.com/elections. Don't miss this chance to exercise your right to vote. My request, my challenge to you is that not only that you vote, but you get 3 or 4 of your friends to vote too. We have to preserve our right to govern ourselves. The best way to do that is to continue to vote for our leadership. Thank you for tuning in today. Keep asking questions. Keep helping us make this bar a better place to practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.